नमस्कार। देवाक्षर में आप सभी का स्वागत है। रामकृष्ण शारदा मिशन हाउस खास नई दिल्ली में आज 26 फरवरी 2023 को भक्त सम्मेलन का आयोजन किया गया था। आइए देखते हैं इसी सम्मेलन की कुछ झलकियाँ। अहं मित्रा वरुणो भाविभर्म्येन्द्राग्नि अहमश्विनो भा अहं सोमवाहनसं बिभर्म्यहं त्वष्टारमुत पूषणं भगम् अहं दधामि द्रविणं हविष्मते सुप्राप्ये यजमानाय सुन्वते अहं राष्ट्री सङ्गमणि वसूनां चिविदुषी प्रथमा यज्ञियानां तामा देवा व्यदधु पुरुत्रा भूरिस्तात्रा भूयाद्वेषयन्ति मया सो अन्नमद्धियो विपश्यति यप्राणिभिर्ययि श्रुयोद्युक्तम् अमन्तवो मान्तौ पक्ष्यन्ति श्रुतेषु दर्शद्दिवं ते वदामि अहमेव स्वयमिदं वदामि जुष्टं देवेभिरुतमानुषेभिः यं कामयमुग्रं कृणोमि तं ब्रह्माणं तं ऋषिं तं सुमेधा अहं रुद्राय धनुरातनोमि ब्रह्मद्विषेशरवे हन्तवाहो अहं जनाय समदं कृणोम्यहं द्यावा पृथिवी आविवेश अहं सुवेदितरमस्य मूर्धन् मम योनिरसहन्तः समुद्रे ततो वितिष्ठे भुवनानुविश्वो तामुन्द्यां भस्मनोपस्पृशामि अहमेव वातैव प्रवाम्याडवमाना भुवनानि विश्वा परो दिवा परयेना पृथिव्यै तावती महिना सम्बभूव ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Beginning for us with a benediction by Revered Vivekananda Mataji, who is going to share some thoughts. Vivekananda Mataji.
We, the Prabhupadas of Ramakrishna Sharda Mission, welcome you to this gathering. I hope to tell you a little bit about this center, in which I have lived, to tell you how it came into being and how the various Prabhupadas have come to this center, and there are others who will come also. There was a lady belonging to the elite society of Delhi who had this desire to bring the Prabhupadas here. Her name was Meera Soni. Maybe some of you have heard about her. She was a very firm lady, and she was the disciple of Prabhu Maharaj of Belur Math, and she went to him and asked whether she could start a center in Delhi headed by Atma Prana Mataji, who was the daughter of Kulpati. Yes, K.M. Munshi. So both of these ladies represented the center in the beginning, which has been inherited by us now, and many Rajikas will be coming to this center from all over India. Why I feel like telling you about this center is that it represents India in a very strange way. 50 years ago, or maybe 100, women were not allowed to do anything on their own. As I was telling you, that there was a society lady called Meera Swami. Her husband was a businessman and she belonged to the high society of Delhi. She was initiated in Belur Math and went to Swami Vireshwarananda asking if she could start on our behalf a center in Delhi. And I was saying that 50 years ago, if we look back to the days of our grandmothers, it is clear that women were nowhere visible in gatherings like this. How is it that it has become possible for women to have a center of their own and run it according to their own desire and love? She, as I told you, belonged to the high society and she knew the governor of Delhi at that time. So he gave her this land for us to come and begin. She called us, invited us, looked after us, and especially the garden that you see is her donation to this center. I still remember, because I was also there from the very beginning. I remember she would take me around to the various gardens in Delhi because she was in charge of looking after almost all the big gardens in Delhi. She would take me there and give me the Latin names, and the very next day she would say, now tell me the name of this tree or that tree. So I had to learn those Latin names, and some of them are still in my memory. I remember, though I have moved away from this center, but I was here for 30 years. So which is not a small time. The land was given to us by the DDA at that time, I think, for a school. They made a condition that if you start a school on this land, we will give you 2 acres. So the money for the center, I do not know where it came from, because she presented it to us without telling us that. Now this center basically has been started by Atma Prana Mataji, Pravrajika Atma Prana Mataji. She loved this place. So the peculiar thing that you will find is the love that comes through for anyone who comes inside the gate. And I have heard from many people that entering the gate itself, they feel like bowing down and touching the ground. Such places are very rare in India, though we have centers all over now, but most of them in Bengal, since the beginning was made in Bengal. But we are represented in centers all over India. How does it become possible that 50 years ago there was not a single woman who would be able to run a center with all its problems and all its successes and maintain it for such a long time? We came in 1970. It was started in April 1970. The peculiarity of this center you can find out because this is the capital of India, and any center representing the capital of India has to be particular. So I invite you all today to this gathering and hope that you will be able to listen to some of the lectures given by people from outside as well as the Prabhupada.
Our next item is bhajan by Ms. Anjita Ray. शरण्ये त्र्यंबके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। नमस्कार। परम पूजनीय विवेकानंद माता जी को प्रणाम। उपस्थित सभी सन्यासिनी तथा भक्तजनों को सात्विक अभिवादन तथा नमस्कार। आज कई वर्ष बाद हम सब इस भक्त सम्मेलन में फिर से आनंद पूर्वक सम्मिलित हुए हैं। भक्त सम्मेलन अर्थात जहाँ भक्त लोग एक साथ हुए और भक्त तो भगवान के लेकर ही आनंद करते हैं। परम पूजनीय भक्तिमाना माता जी कहती थी, ये भक्त सम्मेलन ठाकुर जी के समय से ही शुरू हुआ था। भगवान को लेकर आनंद करना, भगवान को लेकर आनंद करना मतलब आनंद करके भक्त का हृदय में भक्ति का उदय होता है। अर्थात भक्ति, भक्त और भगवान ये तीन एक ही है। भक्त का हृदय में जब भक्ति उत्पन्न होती है तभी वह भगवान के पास पहुंच सकते हैं। ये भक्त और भगवान का संपर्क तो लोहे या चुंबक का के समान है। भक्त जिस प्रकार भगवान को अपने हृदय में देखना चाहते हैं, भगवान भी उसी प्रकार भक्तों को अपनी ओर खींचना चाहते हैं। चुंबक तो सब समय लोहे को अपनी ओर खींचता है, मगर यदि उसमें मिट्टी लगी हो तो फिर वह लोहे को आकर्षित नहीं कर सकता। ठीक इसी प्रकार जो स्वयं को भक्त मानता है, उसमें यदि सांसारिकता रूपी मिट्टी जैसे काम, क्रोध, अहंकार आदि लगी हो तो भगवान के चुंबक की भांति ही उसे अपनी ओर खींचने में असमर्थ हो जाते हैं। भगवान को हमारा मन देखते हैं, कौन कहाँ है, क्या करता है, ये सब नहीं देखते। वह तो भावों का ही जनार्दन है। महावीर हनुमान जी को देखिए, भगवान राम के ऊपर उनका इतना विश्वास, इतना शरणागति कि कहते हैं, मैं राम का दास हूँ, मैंने राम नाम लिया, मैं क्या नहीं कर सकता। बस इसी विश्वास के सहारे ही हनुमान जी विशाल समुद्र बन गए। सीमा कहती थी, जीवन में संग्राम आएगा, दुख आएगा, परंतु जो भगवान की शरणागत है उनका सभी संकट पैर के नीचे से बहता हुआ पानी के जैसे वह चला जाता है। श्री श्री माँ जगत जननी के रूप में इस संसार में आए थे, संसार रूप वृक्ष के नीचे बसे थे और ये संसार का सभी सुख दुख को अनुभव किए थे। हम जीवात्मा तो अपना ही कृतकर्म का फल भोगते हैं, परंतु परमात्मा सदा ही जीवात्मा को अपने और लाकर मुक्त करने मानते हैं। इस कारण ये दुख देकर भी भगवान अपने और की लाने की कोशिश करते हैं। जैसे कि दुख मिलने से जब हमारा संसार का मोह नाश हो जाता है, तभी भगवान की तरफ मन आकृष्ट होता है। इसी तरह जीवात्मा और परमात्मा से युक्त होकर मुक्त होने का प्रयास करते हैं। हम तो नन्हे बच्चे की तरह जगन माता की गोद में जाने का प्रयास करते, पर ये संभव कैसे है? माँ तो हमारा विशाल मातृका के रूप में है, तो कैसे पहुँचे उनके पास? वो भी उनके कृपा से होता है, सब कुछ संभव होता है उनके कृपा से। उपनिषद, गीता, भागवत सभी शास्त्र में ईश्वर प्राप्ति के विषय में लिखे हैं। ईश्वर को ध्यान द्वारा प्राप्त कर मनुष्य इस संसार में मुक्त हो सकते हैं। एकमात्र ईश्वर प्राप्ति से ही पूर्ण शांति, आनंद और मुक्ति मिल सकता है। उपनिषद में सुंदर वर्णन है परमात्मा जीवात्मा के मिलन कैसे होता है। मुंडक उपनिषद में उपमा द्वारा समझाया है। ये वाणी रूप धनुष में जब शरीर रूप वाण युक्त करके एकाग्रता के साथ तीर चलाते हैं, तब लक्ष्य वस्तु ब्रह्म में निवृत्त होता है। तभी जीवात्मा और परमात्मा एक हो जाता है। उपनिषद में भी लिखा है, ये जैसे एक लकड़ी दूसरे लकड़ी के घर्षण से अग्नि उत्पन्न होता है, उसी प्रकार हमारा शरीर रूपी निम्न अरुणी का लकड़ी और प्रणव रूपी ऊर्ध्वगामी खींचने से अग्नि रूपी तेज से परमात्मा की दर्शन हो जाता है। असल में सत्य और तपस्या द्वारा अपने ही आत्मा में परमात्मा का दर्शन किया जा सकता है। इसी प्रकार भक्त भगवान का मिलन होता है। अभी तो कलियुग है, जिसमें निर्दयता, अनैतिकता, असत्यता, लोभ, मोह आदि हजारों अवगुण से सब भरे हैं। तब ये जानकर राजा परीक्षित बहुत नाराज होते और उन्होंने कली को नाश करने के लिए प्रस्तुत होते हैं। तब कली बताया, ठीक है, कलियुग में तो अवगुण बहुत है, परंतु एक बहुत बड़ा गुण भी तो है। इस युग में भगवान को प्राप्त करना बहुत आसान है। केवल नाम जप करना और शरणागत रहना, उसी से परमात्मा को मिल जाता है। जबकि दूसरे युगों में कितना तपस्या हजारों साल करने के बाद भी भगवान से मिलना बहुत मुश्किल। गीता में योगक्षेम महामहिम की बात है, जिसे पढ़कर गीत गोविंद की रचयिता श्री जयदेव जी ने सोचा, क्या भगवान हमारे योगक्षेम को का बोझा उठाकर ले आते हैं? नहीं, वो सोचा ये नहीं होता। उन्होंने ऐसा क्या किया, बहामुन शब्दों को पुस्तक में लाल स्याही से काट कर उसके स्थान पर रामन शब्द लिख डाला और करेक्शन किया कि भगवान बोझ हमारे लिए उठाकर नहीं लाते, बल्कि हमें सब कुछ योगक्षेम देते हैं। फिर वो नदी में स्नान करने चले गए। इधर घर में पत्नी अनाज का एक दाना भी ना होने के कारण आकुल होकर भगवान से प्रार्थना करती है, प्रभु आज दिन में अपने स्वामी को क्या भोजन खिलाऊंगी? तभी कुछ देर बाद देखते हैं कि दो बालक, एक श्यामवर्ण और एक गौरवर्ण के बालक, पीठ में एक झोला भट्टी रसोई की सामग्री भरपूर बस्ता लेकर उनके घर में आते हैं। पत्नी बड़े प्रेम से बालकों को अंदर बुलाते हैं और पूछते ये क्या है? श्यामवर्ण बालक उत्तर देता है, ये आपके पति ने भेजा है। पहले तो जल्दी से ये भारी बोझा मेरी पीठ से उतार दो। उतारने समय वो देखती है उस श्यामवर्ण बालक की पीठ में गहरे लाल रंग के दाग हो गए, मानो किसी ने उस बालक के पीठ में लाठी से आघात किया। किसने मारा तुमको इतनी बुरी तरह से? बालक उत्तर देता, क्यों, आपके पति ने ही तो मारा है। खैर आप छोड़िए इस बात को, हम चलते हैं, बहुत जल्दी में है। बालक तो चले जाने के बाद पत्नी देखती सचमुच उनके पति तो रसोई बनाने की भरपूर सामग्री भेजती है, तब बड़े आनंद से रसोई बनाने लगती है। पति एक घर वापस लौटने पर उन्हें भोजन परोसा। हैरान और आनंदित पति ने पूछा, आज इतना सुंदर, इतनी सुगंध भोजन से कैसे आ रही है? पत्नी कहती है, क्यों, आपने ही तो सब कुछ भेजा, वो दो बालक के साथ। लेकिन एक बात तो बताओ कि श्यामबाई ने सुंदर बालक को आपने इतना क्यों मारा कि उसकी पीठ पर 2 लाल लकीरें बन गई? तब जयदेव सब समझ गए, उन्हें होश आया और वे तुरंत अपने कमरे में गए और गीता की पुस्तक निकालकर उस पंक्ति में जहाँ योगक्षेम वहामुख के स्थान पर जहाँ उन्होंने वहामुख के लाल स्याही से काट कर गदा में दिया था, उसे देखकर फुट के रो पड़े। इससे हमें पता चलता है कि भगवान भक्त की हर आवश्यकताओं को कैसे वहन करते हैं। देखिए, भगवान हर पल हमारी सहायता करते हैं, उनकी ओर खींचते हैं। हमें तो केवल स्वयं को इस अहंकार रूपी अज्ञानता से दूर रखना है और भगवान पर पूर्ण विश्वास और शरणागति रखे, तो उनकी कृपा से भवसागर पार होकर जीवात्मा परमात्मा से मिलित हो सकते हैं। यही भक्त भगवान का मिलन है। भगवान जैसे भक्त को आकृष्ट करते हैं, वैसे भक्त भी बहुत अपनेपन से भगवान को बोलते हैं, ये भगवान, ये मैं भक्त यदि ना होता तो प्रभु आप किससे प्रेम करते? रविंद्र संगीत में एक है ना, ताई তোমার আনন্দ আমার পর আমায় নন্দে ত্রিভুবনেশ্বর তোমার प्रेम होते मुझे। भक्त का मिलन आनंद का मिलन है। श्री रामकृष्ण देव भक्त भगवान का प्रेम का एक विशुद्ध भाव कहना है, जिसमें कोई बाधा विरोध ना हो। इसके कारण वह ध्यान करने में विशेष जोर दिए थे। ध्यान में क्या होता है? ध्यान, ध्येय और भक्ता, ये तीनों का मिलन अवस्था है। इस कारण ध्यान करते समय कोई बंधन नहीं रहना चाहिए। वे कहते थे, अष्टपास यानी लज्जा, घृणा, भय, मान, अभिमान, जाति, गुण, शील, ये अष्टपास से मुक्त होकर ध्यान करना चाहिए। ध्यान में भक्त भगवान का मिलन बहुत ही आनंददायक होता है। श्री रामकृष्ण देव स्वयं कैसे ध्यान करते थे, वह देख हमें शिक्षा मिलती है। ध्यान करते समय मन के सामने इष्ट का विग्रह जागृत रूप से यानी लिविंग गॉड के रूप में देखना। वह कोई पत्थर व मिट्टी का मूर्ति नहीं या कोई कागज का तस्वीर नहीं, वह मूर्ति जागृत माँ जगदम्बा की रूप लेकर श्री रामकृष्ण देव के समीप आती थी। उनसे बातचीत करती थी, कितना सलाह परामर्श देती थी, हंसी मजाक करती थी। ये ध्यान की चित्र मानव मन को छू जाता है। ठाकुर जी का कहना है, मानव तुम भी सच्चे दिल से इष्ट पर ध्यान करोगे तो तुम्हें भी परमात्मा के दर्शन मिलेगा। जीवात्मा के साथ परमात्मा का मिलन ही भक्त भगवान का मिलन है, जो कि आनंद का मिलन होता है। प्रयास हम जितना करेंगे उतना ही हम आनंद में रहेंगे। ठाकुर जी कुछ ऐसे भजन बहुत पसंद करते थे। बांग्ला में है वो, চিদাকাশে হলো পূর্ণ প্রেম চন্দ্রোদয়, উঠরিল প্রেম সিন্ধু কি আনন্দময়, চারিদিকে ঝলমল করে ভক্ত তহল, ভক্ত সঙ্গে ভক্ত সখা লীলা রসময় হে, ভব সিন্ধু জলে বিধান কমলে আনন্দময় বিরাজে, আবেশে আকুল ভক্ত অনুকূল ये सुधा कान मचे। अर्थात चिदाकाश में पूर्ण चंद्र उदय हो गया है, प्रेम सागर उमड़ रहा है, चारों ओर आनंद ही आनंद, जय दयामय, चारों ओर भक्त मंडली झलमल कर रही है। भक्तों के साथ भक्त सखा लीला रसमय भगवान उपस्थित है। भव सिंधु जल में कमल के ऊपर आनंदमय विराजित है, जहाँ भ्रमर रूपी भक्तगण उनके भाव में विभोर होकर अमृत का पान कर रही है। जय भगवान। स्वामी यतीश्वरानंद महाराज जी कहते थे, आनंद में रहो, सदा आनंद में बसो। पूछते हैं कि कैसे होगा महाराज? महाराज जी तब गाकर सुनाते थे, माया आनंद में छेकेंगे आनंदे खाके, अर्थात माँ जिसका आनंदमय है वो कैसे कभी निरानंद में रह सकता? अतः सब आनंद में रहो। जय भगवान, जय ठाकुर, जय माँ, जय भक्त भगवान की जय। माता जी भक्तों और भक्ति के ऊपर अपना ज्ञान देंगे। अब आई एम गोइंग टू इनवाइट श्रीमती जयश्री मुरारका टू शेयर हर थॉट्स।
जननीं शारदा रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरु पादपद्मे तयोः श्रित्वा प्रणमामि मगुरुमगुरु। मौजूद सभी लोगों को मेरा सादर प्रणाम। ये मेरा सौभाग्य है कि आज मुझे शारदा माँ के बारे में जानने का और उनको समझने का मौका मिला है। इसके लिए मैं आप सबकी आभारी हूँ। माँ शारदा देवी का जन्म कोलकाता के पास एक छोटे से गांव में जयराम वाड़ी में हुआ था, एक गरीब ब्राह्मण परिवार में। उनके पिता श्री रामचंद्र मुखोपाध्याय एक बहुत ही दयालु व्यक्ति थे। उनकी माता थी श्यामा सुंदरी देवी। 5 वर्ष की आयु में शारदा माँ का विवाह श्री रामकृष्ण परमहंस के साथ हो गया। मगर जब वह 18 वर्ष की हुई या 16 वर्ष की, इसमें थोड़ा मतभेद है, तो जब वह 18 वर्ष की हुई तो वो अपने पति के साथ रहने गई। शारदा देवी एक समर्पित पत्नी थी। श्री रामकृष्ण ने शारदा देवी को सिखाया कि किस प्रकार सांसारिक कर्तव्यों को निभाते हुए हम एक आध्यात्मिक जिंदगी व्यतीत कर सकते हैं। ठाकुर जी ने माँ शारदा को ध्यान लगाना सिखाया, उन्हें अनेकों मंत्र इत्यादि से का ज्ञान दिया और साथ में उन्हें दीक्षित भी किया। माँ श्री कृष्ण की पहली शिष्या के रूप में उनके साथ दक्षिणेश्वर में रहती थी। श्री रामकृष्ण अपनी पत्नी में एक माँ का रूप देखते थे और इसी भाव के साथ उन्होंने शारदा माँ को देवी माँ मानकर षोडशी पद्धति से शारदा देवी की पूजा करी। पूजा के बाद दोनों ध्यान में लीन हो गए। इस घटना से यह ज्ञात होता है कि श्री रामकृष्ण स्वयं एक अवतार थे और शारदा माँ उनकी शक्ति। जब जब अवतार और शक्ति का धरती पर मिलन होता है तब ही जीवन और धर्म की स्थापना होती है। 1886 में श्री रामकृष्ण ने समाधि ले ली। इतिहास में देखा जाए तो पहले शक्ति जाती है और फिर अवतार, यानी कि पहले सीता मैया ने धरती में समा गई और फिर रामचंद्र जी ने समाधि ले ली। मगर यहाँ पहले अवतार गए, यानी कि श्री रामकृष्ण परमहंस। उन्होंने माता जी को छोड़ गए देश में, ईश्वर के मातृत्व का प्रचार करने को शारदा माँ को यहाँ छोड़ गए थे। रामकृष्ण की मृत्यु के बाद भी शारदा माँ ने हिंदू परंपरा के विपरीत लाल किनारी की साड़ी और गहने पहनना जारी रखा। ऐसा उन्होंने इसलिए किया क्योंकि रामकृष्ण स्वयं यही चाहते थे। वे ये कहते थे, मैं कहीं नहीं गया हूँ, मैं सिर्फ एक कमरे से दूसरे कमरे में गया हूँ। उनकी मृत्यु के बाद माँ वृंदावन गई और वहां शिष्यों के अनुरोध पर उन्होंने दीक्षा देना प्रारंभ किया। शिष्यों की संख्या में वृद्धि होने लगी और मठ का प्रचार प्रसार होने लगा। इसी दौरान माँ शारदा बोध गया भी गई। वहां उन्होंने एक मठ देखा और उस मठ में जो साधु संत रहते थे वो बहुत ही सुख सुविधा के साथ रहते थे। अच्छा खाना पीना था, अच्छा रहने को था। यह देखकर माँ को एक विचार आया कि क्यों न मेरी भी संतान इसी तरह सब सुख सुविधाओं के साथ रहे। तब उन्होंने रो रो कर ठाकुर जी से प्रार्थना करी कि मेरी संतान दर दर न फिरे, सब एक ही जगह पर मिलजुल कर रहें, खाने पीने की भी दिक्कत न हो, ठाकुर के बताए हुए मार्ग पर चले, उनकी भक्ति करें और उनके भाव को समझें। उनकी प्रार्थना के फल स्वरूप रामकृष्ण मिशन और मठ की स्थापना स्वामी विवेकानंद ने की थी। शारदा माँ मठ की संघ जननी थी। माँ किसी का दोष नहीं देखती थी। वे कहती थी, मैं सज्जन की भी माँ हूँ और मैं दुर्जन की भी माँ हूँ। अगर बच्चा कीचड़ में सन जाए तो माँ उसे साफ करती है। वह कहती थी, तुम जैसे हो मेरे पास आओ, चिंता मत करो। माँ सभी को स्वीकार करती थी। एक मुसलमान डाकू था अमजद, वो भी माँ का भक्त बन गया। माँ ने उसे इतना प्यार दिया, रोजगार दिया और उसे खाने पीने को भी दिया। माँ के लिए सभी बराबर थे, चाहे वो मुसलमान डाकू अमजद हो या शरद चंद्र एक ब्राह्मण। जात पात को लेकर माँ ने कभी भेदभाव नहीं किया। माँ ने अपनी ममता के आंचल में सबको पनाह दी। 1893 में स्वामी विवेकानंद ने अमेरिका जाने से पूर्व माँ से मार्गदर्शन और आशीर्वाद लिया। बाद में जब स्वामी जी ने पश्चिमी महिला शिष्यों का एक दल कोलकाता आए, तब माँ ने उन सभी को अपनी बेटियों की तरह स्वीकार किया। सिस्टर निवेदिता ने लड़कियों के लिए एक स्कूल खोला, जिसमें माँ ने अपना पूरा समर्थन दिया। पूरी जिंदगी माँ ने अपने संतानों को अपने आंचल में संजो कर रखा। एक बार बेलूर मठ में एक सन्यासी ने अमेरिका से आए हुए एक स्वामी जी से पूछा कि स्वामी जी ये बताइए कि रामकृष्ण, विवेकानंद और शारदा माँ, इन तीनों में से वहाँ के लोग किसे सबसे ज्यादा पसंद करते हैं। उत्तर में स्वामी जी ने कहा कि शारदा माँ को पसंद करते हैं। ऐसा क्यों हुआ? क्योंकि वो यह कहते थे कि जब हम रामकृष्ण के पास जाते हैं तो वह एक ही बात कहते हैं कि मनुष्य का जन्म ईश्वर प्राप्ति के लिए हुआ है। ध्यान करो, भजन करो, साधन करो। और थोड़े स्ट्रिक्ट भी थे तो उनसे डर भी लगता था। और जब विवेकानंद जी के पास जाते थे तो वो यह कहते थे कि काम करो, देश की सेवा करो, समाज का उत्थान करो, काम करते चलो, एक ही बात कहते थे। पर शारदा माँ के पास जाने से वो कहती थी, बेटा खा ले। माँ की एक ही इच्छा रहती थी कि बेटा खा ले। और माँ के हाथ का खाना खाने में जो मजा आता है आप सभी जानते हैं। वह इतना स्नेह और प्रेम करती थी। माँ ने अपने जीवन के अंतिम चरण में उपदेश देते हुए कहा, यदि शांति चाहिए तो किसी का दोष मत देखो। अगर दोष देखना है तो अपना दोष देखो। इस संसार में कोई पराया नहीं है, सब हमारे अपने हैं। सारा वेदांत का सार माँ ने इस उपदेश में दे दिया। माँ ने और भी कहा, ध्यान करो, इससे मन शांत और स्थिर होगा। फिर एक दिन ऐसा आएगा कि आप ध्यान के बिना रह ही नहीं पाओगे। तीसरी बात उन्होंने यह कही कि इंसान को अपने गुरु के प्रति भक्ति होनी चाहिए। गुरु पर अटूट विश्वास से ही भक्त की मुक्ति हो सकती है। जिस तरह माँ ने अपना जीवन जिया वही प्रेरणा स्वरूप है। अपना जीवन माँ ने जुलाई 1920 में उनका शरीर शांत हो गया। माँ शारदा के अस्तित्व का स्मरण करते हुए मैं अपना मस्तक उनके श्री चरणों में रखती हूँ। जय माँ।
हरि I want to share with you. I'm going first to what this land means to us. This is one of the 4 oldest civilizations and the only one that is sustaining itself. The other civilizations either died out or broke up and spread to other regions. According to recorded history, the Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization started by the British calculation about 2,500 years BC, and it was a very advanced civilization. And this has been discovered by the artifacts found, the figurines found, and interestingly, the figurines found conveyed worship. They represented the goddess and a god. So that refrain was there right in the beginning. Then this northern part of India was ravaged by invaders. There was a lot of suffering and dissipation, at the end of which our civilization of the original residents here had become despondent, confused, and ignorant, and helpless. Now, where am I taking this? This concept of helplessness was not warranted because our scriptures, our Vedas, our Upanishads, our Bhagavad Gita, all have one refrain, the divinity of man. And this was explained very beautifully by Swami Vivekananda. I am quoting him. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy. By one or more or all of these and be free. This is the whole of religion. Doctrines or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or forms are but secondary details. When we have this kind of a message, why do we feel helpless, ignorant and despondent? We are told it's the way of Maya. And if that be so, then let's go back to our Hindu mythology. When I use the word mythology, please do not think it's all myth or conjured up stories. The dictionary meaning of mythology is very old stories and the beliefs contained in them, which means that the beliefs and the stories convey a very intrinsic truth. And here we have for us the concept of the Dashavata. And it's very interesting to note that Dashavata stories are connected to modern evolution. I don't know how many of us have seen it that way. Let's see this. I'm quoting. The very first incarnation was of fish, Matsya, corresponding to the fact that life began in water. The second is of Kurma, or the tortoise, which can live on land as well as in water, representing the transition of life from water to land. The third, Varaha, the boar that lives on land, indicating the completion of the stage of transition from water to land. The fourth, Narasimha, which is half lion, half man, representing the evolution of the life form with comparatively greater physical abilities but with the savage tendencies of an animal. Then we have the fifth incarnation, Vaman, or dwarf, which stands for the stage of primates who had not yet learned to stand erect. The sixth incarnation is of Parshuram, wherein a man is depicted holding an axe, the likeness of the primitive man of the Stone Age, using stone tools for hunting. The seventh incarnation is of Lord Ram, standing handsome and erect, carrying bow and arrow, indicating the progress of the human being further down the road of civilization and using bow and arrow for hunting. In philosophic terms, this was the age of re-establishing righteousness. The eighth incarnation is that of Balram, carrying a plough on his shoulder, and in the process of evolution, he epitomizes the settling down of the nomadic man who explored and developed the art of using agriculture for sustenance. In other versions, the eighth incarnation is Buddha, which indicates the interlude of religion and philosophy in the process of evolution. The Buddha as an avatar symbolizes as part of the cosmic cycle in which dharma is destroyed and Kali Yuga has to be re-established. The Krishna avatar, which is the ninth incarnation, exemplifies the modern man living in a fuller life and almost complete on the evolutionary scale. And Sri Krishna spells out for us what our scriptures have already stated, and he put it down very explicitly in the Bhagavad Gita. The 10th form is that of Kalki, which we are told has yet to come, indicating that the evolution is not complete and we still await one more final step in the pursuit of perfection. Now all this is cosmological information. And looking at this phenomenon of the Dashavatar, I would like to address the problem of today. The avatar or incarnation, as by mythology, practices humility, righteous living, the path of simple living, and high thinking, and represents the next step of evolution. But here is the problem. Every avatar given in these Dashavatars was at the junction of changing of a yuga. We believe that Lord Vishnu incarnated in different forms to preserve the universe and restore peace and dharma in 4 yugas. Satyayuga, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha and Narsimha avatars. Tretayuga, Vaman, Parshuram and Sri Ram. Dwapara, Balram, Buddha and Shri Krishna. And finally in the Kali Yuga, Kalki. So now, look at these figures, they're very mind-boggling. The time frame of the Kali Yuga, according to the Quranic sources and cosmology, is that it began with the end of the Mahabharata and with Sri Krishna's death. His death marked the end of the Dwapara Yuga. Popularly accepted date for the beginning of Kali Yuga is 3102 BC. I don't know if you find this boring, but I found it very fascinating. 35 years after the conclusion of the Mahabharata War. The Mahabharata War took place in around 3067 BCE, and therefore the Kali Yuga started, and they've given an exact date, 17th or 18th of February, 3102 BCE. It's supposed to last for 432,000 years. And it started only 5,124 years ago. So we have 426,876 years to go before this yuga finishes. So don't think that any of these earthquakes or floods mean Kali Yuga ends. It doesn't. Fortunately, we won't be around anywhere near this, but this is just to know. Now when we've come to this, let me just talk briefly about the 4 yugas. Satyayuga, the age of the truth and true religion. The Vedic religion was the only religion. This yuga lasted 1.728 million years, and the lifespan was 100,000 years. Can you imagine living for 100,000 years? Then Tretayuga, ignorance entered in this age. The Vedic religion was still the only one followed. And this yuga lasted for 1.296 million years, and the lifespan of the human being was 10,000 years. Dwapara Yuga was a rapid decline in truth and religious values. The Vedic religion was still the only religion, and the yuga lasted 864,000 years, and the lifespan was 1,000 years. Kali Yuga, the age of irreligion, ignorance, and doubt. Complete decline of religious principles. In the first few thousand years, there are many religions which will emerge, and we know this because we also know about Jesus Christ and various avatars. Some of these religions will sustain. Many will gradually, completely disappear from the face of the earth one by one. The Vedic religion will survive, but there will be very few followers. By 15,000 years into the Kali Yuga, almost all human beings in the world will become atheists. This yuga lasts for 432,000 years, and the lifespan of human beings is up to 100. We are currently only 5,000 years into the Kali Yuga. What am I trying to get at? Does it mean for the several hundreds and thousands of years there is no hope for us? There are no avatars to redeem, there is no one to help? That can't be so, because Sri Krishna reiterated very emphatically, Yada yada dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. What was he saying? Whenever I am needed, I shall reincarnate and re-embody myself. So we have to believe that either it is the cosmological or mythological story of just 10 avatars, or as has been said, that I will reincarnate as and when I am needed. This brings me to the avatars of this age. But we have seen in India especially, there are many, there have been many, and there are many God-realized souls, many spiritual leaders. We have had from Adi Shankaracharya, Ramana Maharishi, we have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and even today, there are many people who are worshipped as gurus, and naturally for their followers, they are an avatar, right? But an avatar is the larger umbrella who comes for re-establishing dharma. That is the primary. And today we know that there is a complete degradation of dharma. I don't need to go into that, we all experience it. So a lifetime devoted to the upliftment of the people. They demonstrate through their lives and the way they live. They don't have to be miracle workers. They don't have to be soothsayers. They have to be realists who tell us where we stand and how we stand and how we must move forward. So let us look at the situation in the 19th century. There was increasing doubt, increasing discrimination, hatred. The good and the bad was standing out. There was discrimination against color and creed, caste, everything that was possible. Religions were fighting each other. And that was the situation when we had the Second French Revolution, which was in 1848. There was a lot of unrest in Europe, and in India around 1857 was the rebellion or the effort for independence. There was persecution and despondency. That time, 1836. A young boy is born in a remote village of Bengal, Gadadhar. Is there a connection here? There is a very definite connection. Here was a voice that spoke truth, righteousness, renunciation of lust and greed, of the harmony of religions, that all paths lead to the same goal. Jiva is Shiva. All this young man was talking about from a very remote village of West Bengal. We have seen from the concept of the avatar that I was talking about that Sri Ram and Sri Krishna went to the ashrams of Sage Vashisht and Sage Sandipan to acquire education, to get that knowledge. I am not questioning that they didn't come with that knowledge, but this is what we know. They spent years to assimilate that knowledge and give it to us, or give it to their yuga. Sri Ramakrishna stayed in that village. He did not want education because education was not what we think, school and college. The teachers came to him. The Divine Mother who had brought him here for this play sent him the teachers. But before that, what had happened? He had been brought to this temple in Dakshineshwar as a priest of Mother Kali. Now that's a simple enough profession for a priest. You render worship every day, you have a room to live in, your food and clothing is looked after with simple prasad, and that's it. But Sri Ramakrishna had come in the age of doubt. So he started with a doubt. I am worshipping you, this idol. But why am I worshipping you? If you are not as real as I am, then why do I need to worship you? So unless you can be as real to me as everything else, or even more real to me, you are not worthy of worship. I'm sorry, I'm putting in my words. But the idea was that he wanted to demonstrate to us, blind, superstitious faith is not the road. We have to question and we have to realize. And he spent his life at those years just on this quest. You have to be either real or not worthy of worship. Then came his teachers, Bhairavi Brahmani. She came and understood that he was not an ordinary sadhak. I'm quoting a bit from the great master. By comparing his spiritual states with the scriptures, she came to the conclusion that Sri Ramakrishna was an incarnation of God. Till then, Sri Ramakrishna had advanced in his sadhana through his own divine longing for God. The Bhairavi wanted Sri Ramakrishna to experience the path prescribed in the Tantras. Sri Ramakrishna also had the approval of the Divine Mother and was eager to pursue the path. The teacher of Advaita, Totapuri, also came to Sri Ramakrishna. And he wanted him to withdraw his mind from all objects of the relative world, including gods and goddesses, including his Divine Mother. And as Sri Ramakrishna says, in spite of all my attempts, I could not altogether cross the realm of name and form and bring my mind to the unconditioned state. I had no difficulty in taking the mind from all the objects of the world, but the radiant and too familiar figure of the blissful Mother, the embodiment of the essence of pure consciousness, appeared before me as a living reality. Her bewitching smile prevented me from passing into the great beyond. Again and again I tried, and I said, it is hopeless. I cannot raise my mind to the unconditioned state. And his guru said, what? You can't do it, but you have to. Finding a piece of glass, he took it up and stuck it between my eyebrows. Concentrate the mind on this point, he thundered. Then with stern determination, I again sat to meditate. As soon as the gracious form of the Divine Mother appeared before me, I used my discrimination as a sword, and with it clove her in two. The last barrier fell, the spirit at once soared beyond the relative plane, and I lost myself in samadhi. Sri Ramakrishna remained completely in samadhi for 3 days. And Totapuri said, is this really true? Is it possible that he attained in a single day what it took me 40 years? This is nothing short of a miracle. And we all know that it was Sri Ramakrishna, in fact, who made Totapuri aware of the Divine Mother and her play in Maya. So it was the teacher, who was the teacher and who was the student, is very clear to us. So the avatars of Sri Ram and Sri Krishna had come to establish dharma in their own yugas. Sri Ramakrishna had come to establish a complete balance and unification of the human being with the divinity within. And then he brought the Divine Mother. We also know that Sri Ram and Sri Krishna had brought their consorts, the goddess Lakshmi. She came in the form of Sita, she came as Radha, she came as Rukmini, and they were there to support the purpose of the avatar. It was Sita ji who was instrumental in making sure that Sri Ram could establish dharma. It was Radha ji who made it clear that pure divine love is the ultimate form of worship. So we have here demonstrators of the consort. Was Sri Radha Devi just a consort? Not at all. Otherwise, how do we understand that a 24-year-old man in one village points out to a 5-year-old girl in another village and says, she will be my consort, my spiritual wife. And this girl is married to him at the age of 16. It is 16. She walks all the way to Dakshineshwar to be with him. She realizes what he is. She sees his God-intoxicated state, and she decides to stay there to take care of him and support him. 3 years later, at the age of 19, in fact in 1872, Sri Ramakrishna, who looked upon Sharda Devi as a special manifestation of the Divine Mother of the Universe, I'm quoting again, on the night of the Phalaharani Kali Puja, ritualistically worshipped Sharda Devi as the Divine Mother and thereby awakened the universal motherhood in her. And once she took on the motherhood of all, she stayed that way right through. Hers was not the path of teaching or demonstrating, but of just being. Just by being the mother who always gave solace and love. At the same time, she stood stoically at the helm of the Ramakrishna order and was deeply revered by Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples. Swami Vivekananda regarded the Holy Mother Sarada Ma as divinity itself. Mother has been born to revive the wonderful Shakti in India. You have not understood the wonderful significance of Mother, said Swami. Once he also remarked, Mother is the incarnation of Bhagala in the guise of Saraswati. Outwardly she is all peace, but inwardly she is the destroyer of the power of evil. Sri Ramakrishna had repeatedly warned his nephew Hriday that if she got angry, none could save her. She was the Shakti of Sri Ramakrishna's Shiva. One of the Saptarishis, Swami Vivekananda, he was absorbed in eternal meditation and he was enticed by a little boy to come down to earth to help him. The Rishi smiled and agrees to reincarnate. This is Sri Ramakrishna's own vision. Sri Ramakrishna narrated this vision of his. Thakur referred to Swamiji as the Nara of his Narayan. In the Mahabharata, it was Sri Krishna who incarnated of Vishnu, who persuaded Nara, the human soul, which is the eternal companion of Narayan, to incarnate as Arjuna. After Swami Vivekananda experienced Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Sri Ramakrishna said to him, now that Mother has shown you everything, this revelation shall stay under lock and key. I have the key, and I shall keep the key. When you have accomplished the Mother's work, you will find the treasure again. He had also said that about Swamiji that the moment he knew about himself, who he really was, he will not stay in his body. Swamiji also demonstrated the trend of this age, doubt. For several years he questioned Sri Ramakrishna and tested him till he was finally convinced. So much so that right at the very end, when Thakur was in bed suffering from cancer, Swamiji thought if in the midst of this racking physical pain he declares his Godhead, then only shall I accept him as an incarnation of God. He was alone in the bedside of Thakur, and it was a passing thought. The Master smiled at gathering his remaining energy and said, he who was Ram and Krishna is now in this body Ramakrishna, but not in your Vedantic sense. What Thakur demonstrated throughout his life, Swamiji broadcast to the world. Swami Vivekananda was the one to revive our Vedic scriptures and give them to all of us, saying that it was our birthright. Till before that, it had been shrouded in secrecy and had almost been lost because of all the turbulence that was going on. He gave it to us. He even was ostracized by people of the city because he had crossed the ocean and spread the word, but he gave it first in the West. He was called and is the Yuga Acharya. So Thakur, Ma and Swamiji were not spiritual healers demonstrating miraculous powers. They lived amongst us as we live. They did not give reassurances, but they showed us the path. Although Holy Mother always said, as long as you remember me, your mother, why should you be frightened? They demonstrated the path of practice, of struggle, of discipline, of determination, and concentration. Sri Ramakrishna, through the physical suffering that he went through, demonstrated to us a very serious, strange truth, and the truth which we have to imbibe. We are not the body. The body and the mind will perish. We are the divine, the divinity of man, which Swamiji talked about, and to worship Shiva in the Jiva is our focus. With these few words, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Madhaji. After Sindhu Bhatti, there are going to be bhajans, there are going to be a talk by Prabhajita Divyanand Pranamadaji, and a little surprise. A small talk sharing thoughts again by Vivek Pranamadaji.
जननीं शारदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयोः श्रुत्वा प्रणमामि। A very good morning to all, rather a good afternoon to all. My humble pranams to all the Reverend Matajis and namaskars to you all. It is a privilege to have been given this opportunity to stand in these pious precincts of Mother's Abode and Sisters' School and share my humble thoughts. The topic of my talk is the leaders by the hand. As we get attracted, captivated, intrigued, and fascinated into the spiritual world of Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Sadhgama, Swami Vivekananda phenomenon, we realize as devotees, seekers, and aspirants that there are certain precepts and ideals we all consciously or unconsciously follow. One is that God exists, called by various names, by various people, in various ways. Two, that God can be realized, a whole process of being and becoming. Three, the purpose of our life is this realization of God. Four, the human history, the whole human civilization has seen numerous ways and methods formalized into different religions, sects, and creeds. Fifth, these methods have been broadly systemized by Swamiji for this very age into 4 yogas: the Raj Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. These culminate into the universal doctrine as given by him, and I quote, "Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work or worship, or psychic control or philosophy, by one or more or all of these, and be free. This is the whole of religion. Doctrines or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or forms are but secondary details. The ideal presented to us is to avoid one-sidedness and harmonize the 4 yogas in our lives. As we proceed under the guidance of our spiritual preceptors, we are ushered into the world of practice, abhyasa, and an earnest and passionate attachment for God, anurag. Our common struggles are in the field of discrimination, viveka, dispassion, vairagya, compassion, daya, study, swadhyaya, prayers, prarthana, japa, meditation, dhyana, holy company, that is sadhu sangha, truthfulness, satyavachana, and the list goes on. These struggles become an essential part of our lives. On our struggling ways, we realize that our prayers are often answered. The divine presence is at times felt. We find ourselves changing, our minds changing over time. So much so that often we find it difficult to recognize ourselves as we look back. I'm sure all of us have these common experiences. As seekers on the spiritual path, one is always expecting signs, be it more calmness, peace, visions or powers, or looking for expansion and attaining more love. And yet, sometimes the divine is perhaps not interested in giving one any of these. And through a simple course of events, puts the traveler on a different and a new path that had not been thought of or envisaged before. And we realize that possibly we are not agents at all. Agency lies somewhere else. I would like to take this opportunity to share a personal experience, a personal journey with you all. Our strange journey into the field of education started as if by chance, surely a divine chance, sometimes way back in December 2002. On a cold, foggy, late evening, while taking a stroll, we came across a young girl of around 3-4 years running recklessly in the middle of a road, of a busy road. One remembers jumping into the traffic, getting hold of her hand and asking her what she was up to. She only pointed towards the dark road leading to numerous apartments and said, "Ma." She was obviously running after her working mother, but had no idea where she worked, as all around were similar looking buildings, apartments, and it was pretty dark by then. We asked her to take us to her home, and she led us, putting her frail tiny hands into ours, into the bylanes of an urban village, Chillagaon, near Mayur Vihar in East Delhi. We left her that day outside her locked house. We did as much as we could do then. But this emotionally overpowering incident forced us, as it were, into initiating our small endeavor with the children in the village. By February 2003, on the auspicious day of Saraswati Puja, a small 10 feet by 10 feet room was taken on rent amongst the single room quarters of migrant workers in the village. With the help of our own housemaid, we managed to get many students, most of them first generation learners. This initiative was an after-school, instructional and tutorial classes for the underprivileged children, with the emphasis on languages, mathematics, geography, history, art and music. Our stress leaned towards making the students to be inspired to learn rather than collect information and facts. Self-study, peer group circles were encouraged. Interestingly, there was a phase when, due to domestic and personal and professional reasons, we were forced to be less active participants, threatening the closure of the center. The senior girls took over the command, emerging from the background as a solid force. Over the years, the children who had joined as first-generation learners slowly but surely traveled in their educational journeys. Some of them even managing to do graduation and post-graduation from esteemed institutions of the Delhi University, IGNOU and others. In retrospect, we found that this work had strange and uncanny resemblance with Sister Nivedita's school and her ways. When we look into our experience and read about Sister's initial efforts of establishing her school, we realized some similarities in the methods, aims, ideals, and events. This parallelism makes us feel today that it was her work that we were made to carry out in our own humble way. We feel or rather realize that she lives on and toils for the people of her country. We pray that we get a particle of her spirit and be an offering to her God. We consciously centered the activities of the center around the ideals of Sri Ramakrishna, his inclusive God-centered religion celebrating the spiritual realization of all religions through different paths and creeds was an ideal we tried to keep. Introducing concepts of universalism, expansion, selfless activity, renunciation and service with the help of studying lives of Thakur, Ma, Swamiji and Sister Nivedita, all this was made possible. Universal prayers seeking peace and happiness for all, followed by meditation, generally ended our sessions. In urban scholars of 9 feet by 10 feet households, it is a constant fight to train the mind and cultivate hobbies. But the struggle of minds, young and old, to rise against all these odds was an altogether enriching experience. We had no plans for any of this as it unfolded. It just continued for nearly 18 years. COVID days brought an end to this practice. In our journey, this practice got immense support from senior monks and nuns, family, a number of people who became friends. We were often moved, amazed, and overwhelmed by this constant support that poured in. It was a great, expansive feeling to consider ourselves as Rama's squirrel that was happy to carry grains of sand for the immense work of Rama. According to Sister Nivedita, there is another facet of education, the hunger for the good of others, as an end in itself. In this sense, the children have to learn to find their center of gravity outside the family. Acquisition of knowledge for the sake of worldly reward is belittling to the soul. Right training is the result of right will, and it cannot be simply evoked by command of words. We learned that telling was not teaching. The balance between information provided and inspiring learners is a great struggle. Recently, one heard a poem in Bangla, a part of which I take the liberty to translate loosely in English. You are extra, extra, extraordinary, and I am very, very, very ordinary. But when I sit close to you, what a surprise! I feel that I can do what you can do. I forget my ordinariness and tell myself that I can do. Ami parbo. Quite frankly, when we look back, and often in wonder, we realize that we are very, very ordinary, and yet something wonderful happened, touching the lives of so many of us. It is only when the divine touches us that we see ourselves transformed. The presence still lingers on, the fragrance still very much there. Her whispers, as if they resonate. Work quietly, she says, dear for dear. Work quietly, she orders, do not despair. I lead you, sure I do. Be patient,
beer for beer. Spurning ease, move on, plod on. Forsaking gain, work on, hands on. Renouncing self, join the glorious dance. Never bitter, never too wise. Work quietly, she whispers, beer for beer. We feel that we have to only open ourselves with reverence and humility. Divine presence is everywhere to guide us, lead us to horizons which we never perhaps dream of. This whole experience is shared that it might be of some value to others, and for oneself, this sharing is itself an inspiration and motivation. We realized that there's a world of warmth outside that loves you back. Expansion is life. We have read it often that it is not the receiver that is blessed, but it is the giver. And here we lived it. For nearly few hours in the evening, for so many years, the world with its mundane distractions would vanish, leaving us energized and invigorated. Mother's last words rang so true. Learn to make the whole world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. The whole world is your own. Jai
सदय हो कर हृदय
We're now going to have Prabhavi Kadirian Banerjee sharing her thoughts with us.
Om Janani Sharda Devi Ramakrishnan Jagadguru Pada Padme Shro Shukla Pranami Namo Pranamis to Mataji's, namaskars to everyone. It's so nice to see the hall so full after such a long time. And you also must be wondering from where this Mataji came suddenly. She's absent for so long. So what to do now? The nature of the work has become like that I have to travel many times. So today we are going to discuss Bhakti and not Vedanta. For the next 13 minutes we are going to discuss pure Bhakti.
45 minutes.
45 minutes. Okay. So it's something very beautiful to have Bhakta Sammelans, because it's a churning of our mind in Bhakti, to listen about the Lord, to listen to the words of the Lord, and in holy company. So this has been a tradition with our ashrams, Bhakta Sammelan. So please keep visiting the center and participate in the functions in large numbers. This is what we want, because this shrine is so powerful. This shrine, if you just sit here, even recently somebody told me this, if you sit in the shrine, you will not realize what is happening on the road outside.
I don't know whether there is anything more to say. Always been to bring these ideas into our lives. And for that, one has to be aware of what this word really means. That which is happening, are we aware of it? For instance, there are so many gadgets coming one after another, and we start using them, not realizing what exactly is technology or the principle on which these things function. Using these gadgets gives us a feeling that we have become great. It is the gadget that is great. I don't become great by using them. But it seems as if we believe that the world has to change for me to become better. We don't seem to understand, if I improve the world with its millions and billions of people, if millions of us can understand that if I change, the world will change. But we feel the world has to change first, and then I will change automatically. I usually think of these gadgets, though I don't use them myself, excepting to accept a note that somebody may have sent to me. Supposing I hold an old knife in my hand, the knife changes and becomes something beautiful or workable. But my hand remains exactly the same. It is a question of understanding why the world is as it is. Why is it that we seem to be giving into depressions and anxiety and become mentally restless instead of understanding it within myself? We look around to other people, and if it is possible, we would beg them to make me happy, which we usually do. I have gone to many countries with a very simple question in my mind in the beginning. How is it that they can keep their countries so beautifully clean? It's a problem continuing even till today. So I tried to look around and find out how do the foreigners keep their country clean and we cannot. And it connects me to the two world wars. There have been two huge world wars in which millions of people died. What kind of people? Usually young, very young, who go and get killed mostly before the victory or the defeat can take place. When any country loses its youth, young people, they need them from outside. So in England, to keep it clean, who are the people who go? Usually, they are Indians. You go to France and find out who are the people who are cleaning the streets. The people whom they colonized. What has happened in Germany? The people whom they cannot bear now, but once upon a time, Germany became almost without young people. So they welcomed the countries in Asia to bring them. They offered all kinds of rewards so that they can come and clean their country. What about our own country? How is it that we can't practice that in our own country, but we want people outside to come and pick up our filth? These questions should be thought of. So, every country that is clean, looking beautiful, is because those who don't have the money, they migrate, they want to collect some money and then come back and make a beautiful house. I've seen in Kerala that there are new houses, beautifully covered. You ask, who are the people living here? Nobody is living here. They are all in either Middle East or in some of the countries which need them. Mexicans, where are they? They are in US. So my question is, How is it that when we go out we behave properly, when we come to our own country we forget all the rules and all the ways that we may have practiced while living in foreign lands? So the question is, does India have anything to offer to people outside so that they can give us something that we need? India has only one thing. Swami Vivekananda makes it very clear. What we can give them is spirituality. So unless we are spiritual, how do we give it to others? And what does spirituality mean? Doing a little yoga so that I remain young, never grow old. This they are learning from us and using all their money in order to become yogis. The thing is, the world is just one. It isn't as if America is not part of this world or India is not part of this world. So if we are conscious of these facts, that spirituality, which does not seem to demand too much money, why don't we practice and show them that we also have something to give in order that you can give us your technology? I don't know whether this kind of exchange is taking place now or not, but at least mentally we can think of these problems and then maybe come to some conclusion in sitting in this land and then making it beautiful as it was once upon a time when India was called Sone ki Chidiya. Today all that has vanished. We are here. We are suffering the results of those days, let us say. So the coming generations will suffer because of us if we don't wake up and understand what is important for us today to show to the foreigners.
Durga
आशा है ये कार्यक्रम आप सभी को बहुत अच्छा लगा होगा। ऐसे ही और कार्यक्रम देखने के लिए देवाक्षर के साथ जुड़े रहिए। आप सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।